to see carries. Commissioner Gonzalez, I have 3-0, but I don't know if I don't know if I heard that correctly.
Yeah, Madam Chairwoman, I may have misspoken. I meant 3L.
Okay, great. So you are recognized on 3L, Commissioner Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. And with 3L, is there a representative from the credit card service company that is present? Or can I at least get somebody from the department?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Amanda Kinnick. I'm the interim director for the Water and Sewer Department.
Thank you so much, Interim Director. And I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little upset at this just because I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I hate companies that charge you a fee to use your own money, right? It's just something that baffles me, right? And in the private sector, it's custom that we kind of eat that cost, right? Now, I do understand that these folks are providing a service, and for that reason, they are making it easier for folks to pay online, and they're charging a fee for that. This was negotiated prior to us being here. However, what bothers me about this item is that it is asking us to retroactively approve a fee increase of, from $395 to $449, right? And I guess I want to understand, and I know this has nothing to do with your decision making, but I want to understand, like, in what universe was it okay for this company to increase their fee without us having any input on a fee increase on taxpayers who are, by the way, trying to pay their bills. Many of them don't have money to pay these bills, and then on top of that, they're paying an extra $5. How did this happen? How can we avoid this from happening in the future? Because it just seems like they increased the fee because they felt like it, and now we have an item before us asking us to retroactively approve a fee that's already been increased. So are we just rubber stamping? Does that make sense?
Yes, I hear you, and we are in agreement. We're working with the CAO now to put together a legislative urging to try to control some of these convenient fees, specifically on debit cards, that there is not an associated risk. And we are also going forward with an RFP next year to look at alternative solutions, potentially incorporating platforms like Zelle or Venmo that don't have these convenient fees associated with them. And we always have the options that you can pay in cash, you can send in a physical check, which do not have the service fees or convenient fees tied to them.
Right. No, and I understand that, but a lot of folks are reluctant to send checks in the mail because you never know what's going to happen sometimes with these checks. Then they get there late. Before you know it, you have fines, and so I do believe that we need this convenience, right? But there are other companies that don't charge a convenience fee, right? And I'm glad that you folks have taken the initiative to release that RFP and try to get better companies that perhaps can provide this. But what bothers me is, how did this company increase this fee without our knowledge, and why were they allowed to do so, right? Do we have an answer for that? Do we know? Have our county attorneys reviewed the contract that we have with them to see if perhaps maybe they weren't allowed to do that? And then finally, I'm never going to vote for a fee increase. So if I don't vote for this today, and if the rest of my colleagues don't vote for this today, right, what actually happens here? Because they've already charged this money. Do these people get their money back? I'm sorry, I know I'm hitting you with a lot of questions. I'm a little bit flustered and I'm a little bit frustrated. But yeah, if you can hit those points.
Sure. I believe the county attorney's office has reviewed, as they do all the items, and reviewed the contract, and it's in the vendor's right to increase the fees. But I don't know if Valerie has.
So why are we voting for this if So if this is at the complete discretion of the vendor, and we negotiated a contract allowing them to increase fees on our residents, if that was done in the past, why are we even voting on this? Because what we vote has absolutely no bearing or merit here. Can somebody from the county attorney's office answer that? Right.
Commissioner, my understanding is that this contract, the way it's structured, we don't pay for this service. I believe that's correct. And the vendor collects its revenue from the charge it imposes. To your point, Commissioner, they still have a contract with the county. The right to act as a middleman is still one that we've granted them. And to the extent this board were to determine that a fee that they've charged or the continuation of this contract is inappropriate, that's entirely within this board's discretion to say we're not going forward with the vendor. You could deny this extension entirely, at which point water and sewer would have to turn to alternate means or alternate methods of going forward with these payments. But you do absolutely have the right to say we're not extending this contract, which would terminate the right of the vendor to impose any kind of fee at all.
And what about the rubber stamping of the retroactive increase? What happens to the extra 75 cents that were charged?
Commissioner, I think we're going to have to look at that, and I think certainly we'll circle back with you immediately to make sure we have a robust and thorough answer to that. But I'm not sure that we can give a complete answer at this point, given some of the interest in play here. But certainly we'll have an answer that we can share with you immediately after this meeting, and certainly prior to the next BCC meeting. On that.
I really appreciate that answer, and I really appreciate how you dug into that. But what frustrates me a little bit here is, I do understand that the charges are not to the county, right? But it's even worse because it's to the taxpayers that don't have the money to pay a lot of these services, and now they're being, you have a single mother who is paying for her water and is about to have, doesn't have money to pay for the water fee, and then you're going to add an extra $5 on top of that, right? And I know you folks take this very seriously, and we've had conversations about this in the past on how diligently you work on our contracts, but perhaps this is something that we need to maybe tighten up on, right? Maybe we need to review these contracts, because in the private sector, right, if somebody's charging my clients something, right, I am going to get in there like a hawk because I don't want them to pay a penny more than what they need to. And I think we all agree on this board and in this county that we do not want our residents to pay more money than they absolutely have to. And if we can lower the amount of money that they're paying, that's why this committee was put together, right? So I'm sorry, I'm not going to support this item.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. Commissioner Cabrera, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And a question to the County Attorney's Office, because I'm a little bit confused based on what I think we received during our briefing. Does this item approve the fee, or does it approve a contract that gives them the discretion to raise the fee? Or is this an extension of their contract that gives them the ability to raise the fee, or does this item specifically raise the fee?
Commissioner, the Fifth Amendment facially recognizes that the fee will be updated from $395 to $449. So that is embedded in the face of the Fifth Amendment itself.
And you said that they have the discretion to raise the fee, lower the fee per their contract, correct?
Commissioner, I believe that's correct. Obviously, though, whether we're in a contract at all is a question for this board or the county. And certainly, like with any other vendor price, if this county believes a price is inequitable or too high, the county has the right to say we're not going forward with the contract. They sit in this capacity pursuant to their contract with the county.
My question is, so let's say we approve this contract, right, this extension. Do they have the ability in 6 months and a year to raise that fee again without coming to this board?
Commissioner, let me review the contract, and I'll make sure we have an accurate answer to that question.
Thank you.
Yes, Jimmy, I'll recognize you. Here's the thing. Go ahead, Jimmy. I'll speak.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Jimmy
You're
Rouse,
recognized.
Chief Operating Officer. It was my understanding, is because I reviewed this item, and obviously the mayor signed it, but I signed off at the bottom, that in fact we needed the approval of the county commission And that's why in the title of the item it says an approval of the increase. It was retroactive, but I was, if you all voted it down, then the department would have to figure out how to address the issue of that, adjusting that increase. The department pays it directly or something. But it was my understanding that this item was asking you all to approve the increase. So that was my understanding.
Thank you for that, Chief. So here's my understanding of this, and this was assigned to another committee. I believe it was infrastructure, and I had similar questions at infrastructure, and I appreciate my colleagues expressing their concerns because they're mine as well. What I think is happening here, and I could be wrong, first of all, is a representative from ACI present? Anyone from ACI present? The contract holder with Miami-Dade County since 2003 who is asking for a pay increase. Going once, going twice. The fact that ACI is not here is concerning to me. To the business community, if your item is on the Appropriations Committee agenda, I strongly encourage you to find it within your very busy schedules to show up here and answer the questions that this board may or may not have regarding items on the agenda and before this committee. Here's what I think is happening, and Madam Interim Director, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I understand that you all are trying to find more cost-efficient ways of collecting these electronic payments, which are a convenience to our residents. Obviously, WASD fees need to be paid. Since 2003, this company has charged $395, and I think when the company got wind that you were trying to find alternatives that are not going to impose a fee on our residents, they decided, let's increase the fee because we may not have a renewed contract with Miami-Dade County in short order. I could be wrong. If ACI was here, they could correct me, but they are not here to correct that. I am not comfortable with raising the fees on our residents, but I also recognize that you need the electronic processing service. It's a legacy contract. This is the service provider that we've had for many, many years. What I'd like to do is defer the item to our next Appropriations Committee, have ACI come and explain to us why that fee needs to be increased, because I don't think that you have an understanding or articulation of why that fee needs to be increased. And they're not here to give us that explanation. Unless you do. Do you know why it is that they need to increase that fee? To our interim director?
Through the chair, my understanding is that the convenience fee is to cover their cost for processing the transactions, but I do not have the details what their costs are.
Sure, but that price for those processing has been the same for quite some time, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's going up on the heels of us looking for an alternative, more cost-efficient option for our residents. So I think, am I wrong in understanding that you all need this service in order to process the electronic payments? Is there another service provider that you have on option as a backup?
My understanding is we need this to process the payments.
Okay.
Well, excuse me?
When does it expire? One of my colleagues has asked.
I believe it may have already expired.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And the fees have already raised. They've been in effect since September of 2024. So there was a unilateral increase of fees. To Commissioner Gonzalez's point, he asked those questions. Clearly, the board is not comfortable with this. Commissioner Steinberg, I believe that you would like to be recognized, but I'd like to defer the item to our next appropriations.
Second the deferral.
Commissioner Steinberg.
Yeah, that's fine. Actually, interesting because one committee passed it, another committee is deferring it. What happens? That's just procedurally. I just want to know. But no, but yeah, I wanted to clarify. The 50-cent increase has already been implemented without our I guess approval or knowledge. But I understand that it's an important. So what happens? This will continue on a month to month until it's. I just want to know practically what happens. Are people still going to be able to pay for their water and sewer fees online somehow? What happens? I just want to know to our customers, to the residents.
Through the, you good? No? Oh, no. Through the chair. Yeah, thank you, Commissioner, for the question. The county entered into this agreement to give our residents the option of paying via credit card. So they do this service on our behalf, and they have agreed to extend the contract while we look for a new vendor. And of course, Chairwoman, as you said, in exchange for that, they've increased the fee that the residents pay for this particular convenience. If we were not to renew this contract, we would no longer be able to offer the service of being able to pay via credit card. So we'd have to ensure that our residents were aware of the alternative ways of paying in the interim while we look for a new vendor. And so that's the situation we would be in. I'm sure, given the gravitas of this board, that we will be able to negotiate something that is mutually agreeable so that the residents are not adversely impacted by the decision. But if we were to not renew, because the item is actually giving us the authority to extend the contract, which allows them to increase the fee. So if you vote not to extend the contract, then we'll have to find an alternative for being able to collect the fees via credit card. And so we'll just have to get to work on that.
Commissioner Cabrera, you were recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I have a practical question then. If they raised it without our approval and they've been doing it without our approval, then if we don't extend it today, are you saying that if we do not extend it today, tomorrow somebody cannot pay online?
Typically in a contract, there's some periodicity, and the attorneys are looking for that, in which we would have to go. I think it was Commissioner Steinberg, will we be month to month to month? The county attorneys will have to help us answer that question.
Because that's my same point, because obviously they raised it without our approval, and they've been charging it without our approval, so therefore clearly they might have not needed our approval, or maybe they do, who knows? But they seem to be doing whatever they want. So I think there probably isn't an issue in deferring it and waiting for them to come here and answer some questions.
Through the chair, if I may, my CFO has joined, and I think she has some additional insights into this item.
Sure. Good morning. You are recognized.
Good morning. I'm Frances Morris, the CFO at Water and Sewer. Just in addition to that convenience fee for being able to use the credit card to pay online, they are our payment processors. So if we do not approve this contract or extend it while we go out for an RFP, we would not be able to process payments. We have in the past gone out to look at other payment processors, and we've looked at the one that the finance department used, Evalon. They could not provide the services that Water and Sewer needed in order to do our bill prints and process the payments aligned with the current billing system that we have. Also, we looked at our banking services, Wells Fargo, and they were not able to provide the services as we needed. That's why we are still with ACI as our payment processor. So we are now updating our billing system to the cloud to hopefully be able to have more companies accommodate our requirements, the billing system requirements right now, to be able to process our payments. But at present, if we're not moving or extending this contract and moving forward with them, we do not have a payment processor, period, not just for the credit card online.
When did you go out to RFP on this?
We're preparing the RFP. We held the RFP because we're going to update the billing system, the current billing system, to the cloud. That goes live this year. And after that, we wanted to be able to really define in the RFP the scope of what our requirements and needs will be, and we couldn't do that until after we do the upgrade. So the RFP will go out this year.
But the contract expires when?
The contract is not expired. What I think the amendment is doing with us right now is approving that they can raise their fee.
No, it's an extension.
Well, an extension as well, but this...
Or Chief, when did the contract expire?
It is my understanding that the contract expired September 2024, so we are seeking an extension of the contract, as the CFO mentioned, so that we can continue providing this service while we create the RFP to go for another vendor.
Yeah, and I asked when the RFP went out and when the contract expired, because we've dealt with this issue in the past, right? The whole idea, and I could be wrong, I believe that there was legislation passed by my colleagues rather recently that said we need to put out RFPs well in advance of the expiration of contracts so that we are not backed into a corner and put into a bind where we are forced to accept contracts because contracts have already expired. And so while I appreciate that we are looking for more cost-efficient alternatives, we are now placed in a situation where I recognize and I hear what you're saying, that you're saying essentially we have to approve this, but the whole idea is to not create the situation where we are placed in a bind and we have to rubber stamp these contracts, because all it does is it creates an opportunity for the private sector to do exactly what is done here. They raised rates because they could, because they were out of contract. And who's bearing the burden of that? The residents of Miami-Dade County. To that, I take very, very serious issue. And so I would like to defer this item until our next appropriations committee, where we can have a discussion with the payment processor. And again, I don't even fault them for it. They're private entities. Their job is to make profit. That's exactly what they're in business to do. I don't take issue with them. But we should have RFP'd this well in advance of the expiration so that something could have been presented to the board in advance of expiration saying, here are our new alternatives. And as a result, those fees would not have increased. So the motion to defer has been moved. Yes, Commissioner Steinberg.
I just want clarification, and that could be fine, because remember, this is a convenience fee. So those who choose to pay with a credit card are the only ones that are getting the 50-cent increase. It's not for every bill. It's just for those who choose to pay. Are there other methods of payment? Does this put anything in jeopardy? I want to make sure that our action today, which I will support, should it not have an unintended consequence on the people we're trying to protect, who want to use their credit card to pay and not some other form.
That is correct. It will be for the 50 cents will go to the customers that want to pay with a credit card online. I'm sorry.
My question is specific to the deferral. What action does that cause on the customer? Is there a negative, something that would they still be able to pay online? And what rate are they paying currently online? So are they at the $3.95 or the $4.49 today?
Through the chair.
$4.49.
So they're already at the 50-cent higher. So our deferral, guys, I just want to make sure, please, yes, thank you.
Through the chair. If we do not get the BCC's approval to extend the contract, then we will have to go back and work with the vendor on an option until we have a new terms and new conditions of the contract. So your deferral will just put us in a position to have a very strong conversation with the vendor about our next steps, which we are willing to do.
Does it have an effect on the customer?
I'm a little hesitant to say this. We will work out a scenario in which we can continue to provide this convenience to our customers, and we will do our best to do that in the customer's best interest.
Thank you for that explanation. And again, the contract expired in September. It's now January. 1 month additional. This service provider, I'm sure, is making millions and millions of dollars off of this particular contract. I don't anticipate that they're going to walk in the next month, but in the next month, hopefully they will receive this message. They'll show up to our hearing, and hopefully we'll have something better to review and consider as a body. So,
and I echo your complete sentiments that we're constantly in these positions and that they should be putting out the RFPs much earlier with enough time before the expiration date so that we're not in this position. So, yeah, I agree. Thank you.
All those in favor of the deferral to our next Appropriations Committee hearing signify by saying aye. Anyone wish to be recorded no. That item is deferred. The next item on my pull list, Commissioner Steinberg, you are recognized on item 3F.
That was not me. I did not pull 3F. I pulled 3I.
3I, Commissioner Steinberg.
Oh, okay. I know you guys probably, let me see, which item is this one? Okay. I thought it was interesting that it was on this agenda because a lot of these departments are their own proprietary funds, enterprise funds. But Obviously, I support the item. I just wanted to make sure, and in my briefing yesterday, that whatever, and if you discussed it, I apologize because I know a lot of these items are going to be repeated on these agendas. But I think it's important if we're going to spend that kind of money on additional equipment, which is an important part of what we need to be doing, that TSA and the federal government has the manpower and the bodies to actually man those new investments that we are making to make it more efficient and run better and make sure everybody's protected and can enjoy the experience going through security, but for whatever that means. But yes, ultimately, I just want to make sure that they're not going to be spending this money and the equipment's just going to be sitting, and we're not going to have people to actually manpower them. So I don't know if there's a way to make it contingent on that.
Sure. I mean, I'm glad to answer the question, Commissioner. I spoke personally with TSA's Federal Security Director at MIA, and he assured me that, yes, they will have the staffing in place to man that new equipment. As a matter of fact, during our busiest holiday season ever, this past holiday, they had a 3.5% increase in staffing to cover our needs for the holidays. So he assured me that we will have the staffing in place when these machines come online later this year in advance of the following holiday.
Is there a way we can get that in writing?
I will try my best, sure.
Do we, because once we purchase,
Right.
these are ours, and I want to make sure that they're not sitting there for, 2 years
Understood.
without the manpower to actually operate them. Okay, thank you.
Understood. We have a fairly good track record with TSA when it comes to their staffing.
And that's fantastic.
They don't get sent to the border like CBP does. It's a little different dynamic, but
All
yes.
right. Thank
I will try to get it in writing.
Perfect.
Commissioner, would you like to move 3I? No. I'll entertain a motion on 3I. Okay, it's been moved. It's been second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone wish to be recorded no. 3I carries. We are now on 3J. We have several pulling commissioners. I have Commissioner Steinberg, Commissioner Cabrera, and I also am pulling 3J. So Commissioner Steinberg on 3J. Okay, Commissioner Cabrera on 3J.
So I have one question, which is, I believe in here you have 171 vehicles being purchased for the sheriff's office. So just want to make sure that since they are their own constitutional office, that they do want these vehicles. Has anybody spoken to them?
Thank you, Commissioner Namita Opal, Chief Procurement Officer, to the Chair. Commissioner, the Sheriff's Office still wants these 171 vehicles, at least for this year, and we'll work with them for the next fiscal year. What do they want to do?
Thank you.
Anything further? No. Okay. Namita, I have a few questions on 3J, and I appreciate Commissioner Cabrera's question. I had a similar one, but the Sheriff's Department is not the only department that is a constitutional office that's listed in here. The Elections Department has a list. I'm assuming the answer is the same for all of the constitutional offices that are included in this item?
Yes.
And this item was previously amended at Infrastructure Committee some time ago to separate the emergency, immediate need fleet items, and so that carried. And so this is what I consider to be the non-immediate, non-emergency fleet items. And you kind of said it clearly, Director. You said that this is what they would like. How much of this is necessity? Or does a department director just submit a list to procurement and say, this is my wish list of fleet vehicles for this fiscal and calendar year?
So, Commissioner, actually, there's a very thorough vetting process that a department director has to do, along with the fleet division of ISD. Basically, they look at what's the age of the vehicle, what's the repair history of the vehicle, and is it worth keeping the old vehicle versus getting a new one. And after they assess what the vehicle's age are and the repair and the mileage, the request is sent to ISD, and they vet the request and also approved by OMB whether we have the money to replace, that is, makes sense to replace or not. So there's a thorough vetting process before a request comes to my department.
I appreciate that explanation, but before the board, the item that is prepared has a chart, and it outlines the department, the type of vehicle, the vehicle anticipated to be purchased, the quantity, the estimated purchase cost, the total, and then it has the vehicle powertrain, articulating to us whether it's an electric vehicle or not. But there's no articulation on what the necessity of the vehicle is. So I understand that it's a wish list from each department, and I recognize that every year we need to upgrade and purchase new vehicles for the county. That I don't question. But how do we kind of dive in and see what's absolutely necessary and what's not? So, for example, under elections, there is a 2-passenger golf cart listed for $25,000. I live in the South. Golf carts are everywhere. You can get a 4-passenger golf cart for $6,000, right? That's only one item on this item that aggregates and totals $41 million. But it begs the question, if we were to dive in and get deeper, how much of this $41 million, again, in a very, very tight budget year, is absolutely necessary? And the fact that the item doesn't articulate or speak at all to the necessity of these items gives me a level of discomfort. So the fact that there's a very thorough vetting process, I would like to see in future fleet items within these charts, not just a list of what a department director wishes they would like to buy for their department, but an articulation to the board of why you need it.
We'll be happy to, for the next year, we'll be happy to work on it, Commissioner. And Yomel from Fleet Division is here if you want to understand the need more.
Yes, you're recognized.
Good morning, Yomel Sakeda, Division Director for Fleet Management over at PIOD. So we do have that in preparation for this item. We did reach out to the different departments, and they give a specific itemized reasoning or justification for each one of the vehicles. If you'd like, I could read off a few for you. But
why don't we have that? Right, I mean, we're the body approving the $40+ million. It would be helpful to us to have that information.
It is a very detailed and large list. Historically, it hasn't been part of this item, but we'd be happy to provide it if needed.
Can you provide it to the board so that we can attach it to this item, so that once it goes to the full board, our colleagues will have the benefit of that information?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone further on 3J? I'll entertain a motion. Anyone wish to move 3J? Commissioner Cabrera has moved it. Commissioner Gonzalez has second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone wish to be recorded no. 3J carries. Oh, Commissioner Steinberg is a no on 3J. I do want to be clear that it is moving forward as amended, because I do want that explanation of these vehicles to be attached to the item, whether that's a formal amendment or not. I do think it's important to have that information moving forward. 3J carries. I have 3B, which is the item allocating $26 million over 3 years to the Homeless Trust for the operation of certain facilities. So if a representative of the Homeless Trust can approach, I would greatly appreciate it. Morning, welcome. How are you, Vicki? Happy New Year.
Good morning, you as well.
So my question is a rather simple one. On the first page of the item, under permanent supportive housing, hotel to housing, it says, the selection committee recommended New Hope Corp to operate the 107-unit hotel to housing conversion project. I'm assuming that's the La Quinta Inn?
Yes, ma'am.
It is the La Quinta Inn. Okay. And so on the very final page of your item, it breaks down the $8 million a year, which totals the 26, I think, over the term of the contracts that were procured. And Vicki, if you'll look with me on the very final page of your item, it's stamped MDC 009. It says PSH Hotel to Housing, but next to La Quinta, it says Vista Group. It doesn't say New Hope. And there's no financial allocation next to it, right? Everything else shows these dollar amounts, but next to La Quinta, it doesn't say New Hope, it says Vista Group, and there's $0 next to it. So if you could just clarify that for me, it would be helpful.
Yes, what you're seeing here is a list of all applicants. We received 18 applications in this RFA, so there was more than one provider that applied to operate the La Quinta, and Vita Group was one of those, but they were not recommended for funding. So in the total recommended amount, you only see an amount for the provider that was recommended for funding.
Okay, so this chart is not the way that the $8 million will be allocated annually? Because that's when you actually tally these numbers, it totals the exact $8.7 million. So I understood your Exhibit A to be a breakdown, which I appreciate you doing that and getting into that level of detail of how the $8.7 million is going to be allocated annually. Teach Team, New Hope, Hermanos de la Calle, and it breaks down each dollar amount for the different projects.
Correct. There is no guarantee that each one of these providers is going to be funded in each category. If you look under the ranking, they were also ranked. So if you see no dollar amount in recommended, that means the provider is not recommended at all. On the left, if you see a ranking, we will go to the first provider for that particular project activity and offer them the opportunity to operate or provide supportive services for the particular intervention. And if that provider declines to offer services in that particular area or for that particular intervention, we will then go to the number 2 provider. We will not necessarily be funding everyone here, but we could be funding everyone here. I'll just point out that this goes hand in hand with HB 1365. We are working feverishly to scale up interventions. We are daily looking for new places to scale up capacity, both short and long term. So this will enable us to attach services to different housing, both short and long term, that we leverage without tremendous delay. We can't operate housing without the appropriate service level.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. I have no further questions. Anyone else on 3B? Seeing none, I'm happy to move the item. It's been moved, it's been second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone wish to be recorded no on 3B? 3B carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item that I had on my pull list is 3D. And if Terrence can approach, I have a few questions regarding this item. This is in regards to the West Perrine Community Redevelopment Agency. And is Terrence here? Oh, hi, Terrence. Welcome. Good to see you. Happy New Year. So within this item, this budget that we are being asked to approve has an itemization of $140,000 for the executive director. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it's very commonplace for these CRAs to have executive directors. I don't take issue with that whatsoever. But is it your understanding that the Naranja Lakes CRA has the exact same executive director?
Yes.
Is it common for our CRAs to have the same, is it common for our CRAs to have the same executive director overseeing more than one CRA? Have you ever seen that in your experience here in the county?
No.
Okay. I have not either. And in June of 2024, the Naranja Lakes CRA was amended to allocate $120,000 to the same contracted entity to serve as the executive director of that. So we have $120,000 and $140,000 to be the executive director over these CRAs that meet once a month if there's quorum. And that's not something that I feel comfortable with to my colleagues. I'm not sure why the same executive director is serving over multiple CRAs. I have concerns regarding conflicts of interest, so on and so forth. So I'm happy to approve this agenda, but to the attorneys, let me know what the best thing to do is by way of bifurcating out the 140 to this particular executive director. So what I'd like to do is bifurcate out that 140 and send this back either to the CRA, or I'm not sure whether we need to approve this as amended with that separated out, but I look to the attorneys for guidance on how best to move forward.
Certainly. The committee, obviously, one of your powers is to amend items that come before you. So you could amend the item to strike the 140. It would still be up to the Board of County Commission to approve it with that amendment. But that is the budget before you. In the past, the board has recommended amendments to certain budgets for the CRAs, and it's been sent back to them to reconsider it. So.
Okay, so to my colleagues, that's what I'd like to do is bifurcate out that 140 allocation to this executive director and move the item as amended with that bifurcated. Does that require a motion in a second, Terrence?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Oh, the sponsor of the item is present. Commissioner McGee, welcome. You are recognized.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Obviously, this is my item. This item has been approved by the CRE board, and if there are any questions, I'm okay at this time to answer them.
Thank you, Commissioner. It's not my understanding that it's commonplace for there to be one executive director over multiple CRAs. And in this instance, we have the same executive director serving over two CRAs, which is not something that the attorneys or I have ever seen before. And so what is the justification of having, if you're aware, of why we would have one executive director serve over multiple CRAs? Again, the total contract value is 200 and what's the math on that? $260,000 that this person would be receiving of taxpayer dollars on these CRAs that meet, as you know, they often lack quorum. But the contract value is not dependent on whether there's quorum or not. So it's $260,000 to serve over two CRAs when that's simply not the way that we do it here, typically in Miami-Dade County.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and great question. As you're aware, there's nothing that says it's illegal. And maybe that's a question to the county attorney. Is it illegal for the same CRA director to serve over multiple CRAs within Miami-Dade County?
I'm not aware of anything at least in the CRA statute. The only prohibition is regarding board members and their ability to sit on other boards as dual office holding. But under the ethics provisions of the code of the statute, there is no provision related to the executive director.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With permission to ask the attorney a few more questions. Thank you so much. So your answer is no, it's not prohibited by statute or it's not prohibited by the ethics code. Secondly, simply because it hasn't been done doesn't make it that it cannot be done, correct?
I'm not aware of any prohibition in state law. With regards to the ethics provision, I was referring to the state statute. I'm not referring to the county's ethics ordinance. That's an opinion that has to be rendered by the Commission on Ethics.
And just to be clear, this CRA is wholly within District 9, within the West Perrine area, correct?
Yes, the West Perrine CRA is solely within District 9.
And the members of the CRA board chose this executive director to serve in that capacity and also approved a salary for them? For her?
The executive director was competitively selected by the CRA, and a contract was entered into prior to this budget. It was last year that I believe last year's budget is being used to pay her for her services during the year. So this was before. This budget now includes the $140,000 to pay for her services in the coming year.
And final question, just to be just to make sure I'm hearing this correctly. When that board selected this executive director for the salary, it was a competitive process. It wasn't as if the board just single-handedly chose her. They did go through a competitive process, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
For West Perrine.
For West Perrine. And, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I don't see the problem here. It was done within the confines of the law. Simply because you find that it hasn't been done before doesn't make it illegal and doesn't make it out of the ordinary. What I do find is that by having the same executive director to operate two CRAs, which are within District 9, one being the West Perrine CRA, and the Naranja CRA, which is predominantly in District 9, to have the same person to have a reduced salary to run both of them so that the plan for the South-Dade community specifically in the District 9 area can actually move forward. I don't find that to be a problem. Neither do I. And there's another issue here. This is the first time I'm ever hearing about an item relating to the CRA and District 9 being pulled by other commissioners outside of District 9. So I'm just looking and I'm asking that we do not amend this. We keep it where it is. It is a competitive process. She was chosen by her board, and they set her salary.
Thank you, Commissioner McGee. It's just come to my attention, and I recognize that it's not illegal, but it's also not customary. And as I explained, I see conflicts of interest arising, and it just came to our attention from our Office of Management and Budget. I had an issue at $260,000 again for CRAs that meet once a month, if they're lucky, if they get quorum. But the contract has actually been increased to $200,000 for each of the CRAs. Can someone from Office and Management and Budget confirm that? So now we're looking at $400,000 of taxpayer dollars, yes, sent and spent for community redevelopment agencies, yes, in the South, and Naranja Lakes is in District 8 and District 9, just to be clear. So can we confirm whether or not this executive director contract is now been increased to $200,000 for each of the CRAs, Naranja Lakes and West Perrine?
David Clodfelter, Office of Management and Budget. It's my understanding that that was done in September or October by the board, by the CRA.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. To my colleagues, I recognize that there are no rules against this. It is not my comfort level. $400,000 is a lot of money, and I do not feel comfortable having the same executive director serve over both CRAs, one of which serves the residents of District 8. So I would like to motion to bifurcate that section out of the item. Oh, yes. Commissioner Gilbert, you are recognized.
I have the clerk show me is present, please. Just to add some historical context, I believe that for several years, I think it was the Omni CRA and the Southeast CRA in the city of Miami had the same executive director. I believe it was actually separated when Commissioner Sarnoff took office. So it's not completely unprecedented. One of the things that I noticed is that when you have, I don't know that it's ideal, and I don't know the particular situation, but from a historical perspective, it has happened before. And OMB acts as essentially the executive director for several CRAs that the county oversees, and it's the same OMB. So it's happening right now. And when you have one person, you're at least saving the type of benefits level. I mean, so it actually is a cost savings. It is a cost savings. Even if you add more money, it's still a cost savings because you're still just paying the one person. And so I think it can be worked out. I think the larger question is, do you want to approve the budget for that person, and do you want that person? And I think that they decided that. I don't take issue with it.
Thank you. To the attorneys, and I'd like to get clarification on this now because obviously I value the experience and the knowledge of my colleague. Is it historically the case that we have one executive director serving over multiple CRAs?
I don't believe I was here when, at the time that Southeast Overtown and Omni had their executive directors. I know that they have separate executive directors right now, so I would defer to the commissioner's knowledge of that. With regards to the statement that for the UMSA CRAs, I believe is what Commissioner Gilbert is talking about, the county has, county staff in OMB has served as the executive director for the various UMSA CRAs. That's only because they handle all the money, but they can speak to that. So that is correct what Commissioner Gilbert is saying about at least with the UMSA CRAs.
Okay, and thank you for clarifying that. And so why then are we asked to approve a budget for an executive director at $140,000 when it's actually $200,000? Why is the non-accurate number before the board for review and consideration?
Do you want to speak to it?
Good morning, Vivian Cao. The additional funds were approved after the budget was approved by the CRA board in the meeting for the month of October.
So does this item need to be amended to reflect the actual amount? What would be the proper procedural mechanism?
So the way that it would happen is that if you approve this budget at $140,000 and there are changes to the budget to increase the amounts, The CRA is required by law to amend their budget and resubmit the amended budget to the board for its approval. So if they're going to increase it by $60,000, they would have to submit an amended budget. Alternatively, the board could, if it is inclined to do, submit the budget back to them to do the additional amendment and have it presented to the board with the correct number. But right now, Ms. Cow is correct. They approved a budget for $140,000 and then after the fact increased the dollar amount of the contract.
And to the sponsoring commissioner, and again, thank you for being here. Do you know what the reason is for the increase of the allocation to the executive director to $200,000?
Well,
What the-
from
and
thank
and
you,
what
Madam.
the justification is for the increase?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, the question as it relates to salary, I do believe when the board of that CRA created this particular salary, it was based on the amount of money they had been paying to OMB, to the county, to do that work. And someone from the county, from OMB, can stand up to the podium and answer a few questions, if that's okay with you, Madam Chair. Prior to this executive director coming on board, how much money was the CRA paying to OMB to conduct the same services?
The fiscal year 23-24 adopted budget was $150,000.
So
And it was the reimbursement for the services that OMB provides.
I get that, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I get that. So on the record right now, you're saying prior to this executive director coming in, the floor and the amount was at $150,000 that CRA was paying to your department to do the work that this current CRA director is doing now, correct?
A portion of the work, not all of the work.
Okay.
There's still some work that the executive director is unable to perform.
Correct. So just to be clear on the record, the county was receiving $150,000 from the CRA to do the work that the CRA current director is currently doing now, correct?
A portion of
A portion of it. So now, carving out that portion, are there other duties and responsibilities that are needed for the CRA to function that the county cannot perform?
I don't understand your question.
The question is, does OMB perform all the responsibilities and duties that are needed in order for that CRA to function properly and according to law?
Yes.
Okay. So and that relates to the West Perrin CRA, correct? All right. So the floor then is $150,000 that you are receiving that you're no longer receiving anymore because that money now is going to the executive director of this CRA, correct?
The allocation was reduced.
Thank you. And the same thing works for the Naranja CRA. You're no longer receiving that portion of those dollars because now it's going to an independent CRA executive director, correct?
It was the decision of
whether it was the decision or not, the question is the money is no longer going to you. It's going to an independent CRA director for that particular CRA, correct?
the way that it was approved, yes.
Yes, so it was approved. Now, as it relates to how many people that CRA director can hire within that $200,000, can you please tell this board, based on what you know, how many people does that $200,000, does it cover just for one person? Does it cover two people? How many people is that CRA director responsible for in ensuring that that ceiling of $200,000 never surpassed to do the work of that CRA?
Commissioner, I haven't received an official list, but so far from what I see, it is a portion of the executive director, I believe an assistant and probably a project manager.
Correct.
I might be wrong.
So just to sum up what you're saying, because you're not wrong, just to sum up what you're saying, that $200,000 is basically going for an entire support staff for that CRA in Naranja and the CRA in West Perrin, correct?
It's two separate allocations.
Exactly. That's exactly what I want to know. But the question, and I guess your answer is yes, that CRA director has a company, and that company is now in charge of handling the responsibilities and carrying it out for those two separate CRAs, correct? And the ceiling that she can make, her company can make for all the work is $200,000, correct?
Right now, it's $200,000, but
you.
it doesn't cover all of the services.
Whether or not it covers all the services, but the particular company that is now serving as the CRA director, her ceiling for that company is $200,000 to handle all the services, and it will cover her hiring her own staff to do that, correct?
Yes.
And she cannot surpass the $200,000.
Not per CRA, no.
Thank you. That's the question. Thank you,
Madam Chair, if I may.
Commissioner Gonzalez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much for that explanation, because this puts me so much more at ease, right? I was very reluctant in the beginning, but just to clarify, because this is what I'm hearing, and I just want to make sure that I am following correctly. We're not giving this CRA, it's not $200,000 for the salary of one person. This is $200,000 for several people that are going to be providing several functions, which includes running the CRA. Is that what I'm hearing?
The $200,000 is an agreement that we have entered with a consulting company.
Got it.
The hiring of the staff, that's independent of her. We have entered into an agreement with a consulting company for the West Perrine and the Naranja Lake CRA. It happens to be the same consulting company.
And that is what it says in the contract?
Yes.
Okay, understood. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Gonzalez. You said that with some hesitation. I just want to be clear, because I appreciate the sponsoring commissioner being here and answering questions, because it does give me greater clarity as well. The contract that not you individually, obviously, but the contract that was entered into specifies that the $200,000 is not just for the executive director, but for the executive director and assistants and project managers?
If I'm not incorrect, the agreement is for services.
Correct, but the agreement specifies that those services are going to be provided by the executive director and others. That's what I'm trying to understand. Is that the contracted agreement between the CRA and this particular consulting company? Because that's what's been represented.
Through the chair, the $200,000 represents $140,000 for the executive director and $60,000 for project management. So that is what is being attributed to this contract that will be used to ensure the services that the CRA is obligated to provide are provided. So it's split up into two buckets, which is reflected in the document before you, $140,000 for the executive director and then $60,000 for project management services, for a total of $200,000.
Okay, that gives us clarification. And any other questions from, yes, Commissioner Cabrera?
I have a simple question to the sponsor of the item. Does this allocation, is it for one person or multiple people?
Thank you, sir. It's for multiple people. The firm has 3 people working per CRA. So the Naranja CRA, she makes, I believe it's at 120, or between 120 and 140, and the remaining of that amount, like we just heard, goes to her management company to help set that up. Also, similar to Naranja, West Perrine is set up the exact same way, where she's not making $200,000. Her salary is between 120 and 140, and that covers her 3 staff members.
So we're hiring her essentially the same way you hired OMB before, which has multiple employees. You are now hiring company X that has multiple employees to do the job.
Yes, and that is, and the reason being is for almost 10 years, Perrine was pretty much dormant, and OMB was not providing services to Perrine. They put them on the back burner. That's why a lot of the services, the high crime rate, the dilapidated buildings, the streets filled with junk, all of those things had been part of the slum and blight program to cure that area. But for the past 10 years, the county did not give the attention to that Perrine area. So what ended up happening was the community met with me. They were sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they asked us to help them locate somebody who can come in and get this thing moving. So what they've been able to do in that short period of time, they've worked with Miami-Dade County Police Department. They work with the private trash removal companies. They've put up cameras. They've helped out with Slight and Blum, and they've done all of this in a short period of time. So the short answer is yes.
Any other further questions? Again, thank you, Commissioner McGee, for joining us and answering questions. We do appreciate you spending time. I now have the comfort that I needed in order to support the item. So if there's no further discussion, I'm happy to move 3D.
Second.
It's been moved. It's been second. Anybody wish to be recorded a no on 3D? 3D carries. Thank you, Commissioner, Vice Chairman. Excuse me. Thank you, Vice Chairman. The last item that I had pulled is 3H, and 3H was on our airport committee just earlier today, and I honestly thank and appreciate our chairman for his thoughtfulness and his leadership, and sometimes assigning items to multiple committees that allows us to kind of do the deep dive that some of these items require. And so I have a few questions on this emergency janitorial contract. And the questions that I have are really purely fiscal in nature. And I understand that we have to approve this. I understand that we are fast approaching the expiration of this contract, and we need an extension because there was a procurement that took place, and we are at the tail end of that procurement, which is my understanding. But can someone approach on 3H, because I have questions on the numbers of this extension? Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us, Director. So explain to me, first of all, tell me why we need this extension. Is it, again, because we are in a situation where we're coming to the expiration of a contract without a new contract in place ready to go prior to the expiration of a contract?
That is correct, Commissioner. The chair. The replacements are not approved yet, and we need to make sure the janitorial services are provided at the airport. And so, for continuity, we need the approval from the board.
Okay, and so I don't wish that I had to be repetitive, but unfortunately, you're going to see and sense from me. And again, I'd like for this to change. I don't want to be repetitive in this nature. But the numbers here are such that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but under the extended contract or this extension that we are being asked to enter into because we have an expiration that is impending and a service that must be provided, did these vendors once again raise their rates on the county?
They did, Commissioner, but a lot of it has to do with for example, the living wage increases and the general increases in the CPI. For example, I'm going to use an example. One of the companies, their billing rate did go up from $277,000 per month to $294,000 a month. So 274 prior to the living wage, and then we applied living wage. So partly it has to do with the wages and the general cost of doing business.
But living wage has been enacted in Miami-Dade County for some time now. So they were previously contracted to honor living wage.
They are. So every year as the wages go up in October 1, these wages, we have to adjust the contract rates.
Oh, I understand.
So sometimes it's 5%, sometimes it's 6%, depending on, and sometimes the contracts also have a CPI. So for labor portion, we apply living wage. For the non-labor portion, we apply the general price index.
Okay. And I'd be interested in what the amount is. I think you said, did you say 5%, a 5% increase for living wage?
I don't have the number in front of me, but it could vary from 3 to 5% a year.
Yes. So for the contract that you are asking us to extend for a term of 6 months, the monthly average rate is about $366,000 per month. And under their previous contract, they were billing us as a county $300,000 a month. And on the 4-month extension, the monthly average turns out to $325,000 a month. And previously, they were at $308,000 a month. I think that's more than a 5% increase. I'm going to attribute everything that is in excess of that 5% increase to private industry doing what private industry does, right? And taking advantage of a situation where Once again, we are in a corner, and they have the knowledge of knowing that we absolutely need the service, and they're jacking up the prices on us accordingly, and we're being asked to approve it. So I know you're doing amazing and diligent work in your department and in procurement, and whatever we can do to help so that we are not consistently being placed in this position, let us know so that we can help. But here at the Appropriations Committee, every single time I see situations like this, where we are not just being asked to extend contracts, we're being asked to extend contract where rates are going up on our residents and are coming from our department's bottom line. That is affecting our, that's something that I'm going to highlight so that we can hopefully curtail it from happening in the future. Those were the only points that I wanted to raise. I look forward to the new item that's going to be presented, I think, in February. Again, we're talking about airport. We're talking about, obviously, keeping everything clean. And I appreciate you answering my questions. Does anyone have any other questions on 3H? Seeing none, I'm happy to move 3H. It's been moved. It's been second. Anyone wish to be recorded no on 3H? 3H carries. Any additional unreadiness by my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you for joining. Oh, yes, Chief, you are recognized.
Madam Chair, I've been asked to request that items 3B and 3C be waived to next week's BCC meeting. There's a time sensitivity. One of them is a real estate transaction, and the other is retaining certain services. So if those could be moved to the next
Do
week.
any of my colleagues have any objection to advancing 3B and 3C? I don't either, Chief. I'm happy to advance it, assuming our chairman accepts the same. Thank you so much, everyone. We are, oh, yes, our attorney is raising his hand. You are recognized.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. Were 3E or 3F pulled? Because I had those written down.
I don't have 3E or 3F on my list, and I don't see my colleagues jumping up and down saying they want to speak on it, so I think that those carried on the passing of the agenda. All right, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.